potential, purpose, peace, possibility. These words invoke a feeling of hope, yet they seem hollow when you hear them over and over again. Because what do ideals really look like in action? How do we act out our dreams in a world that seems like a realm of purgatory? What we all had in common is that we were misfits on a journey to interview hundreds of millennials to retrieve the stories of the people in our generation, known as the next lost generation, the recession kids, Generation Screwed. From the kids going to Wall Street to the kids sleeping on it, we wanted to achieve an analysis of ruthless objectivity. Who were we? What could we change about this world, and what can't we change? So I was finally free from a decade and a half of sitting behind a desk learning information I was destined to forget, going to SAT prep courses, trombone practice, basketball practice. Young people and all people spend our lives being ranked, filed, and sorted according to our ability into someone else's idea of utility, and this starts when we are so young. By the time we graduate college, we've been treated like an object for so long. We've absorbed so much crap in our psyches. It's almost impossible to avoid being bogged down in self-loathing. We've been bred to perform in this constant state of fear that this is what it takes to keep from being swallowed in the real world that awaits us. And yet I knew that there was a whole wide world to see. Beautiful places, beautiful people, different lifestyles, different ways of being. They can teach you how to be an accountant, but they can't teach you how to live. And now was the time to really do something. This is probably why Jan said I was all over the place, because I'm trying to figure out this society, and it's clearly insane. It makes no sense. It seems like we are blindly marching towards a collective doom by following unspoken and black letter rules of a giant national myth. And I think the millennials know this. Perhaps other generations had reasons to trust the system a little more than the millennials who graduated into the recession, because there were many years after 2008 where even those of us who wanted to work, and I will admit there were some of us who didn't want to work, but even those of us who wanted to work could not find a way to make an honest living. We were defaulting on our student loans. We were experiencing a collective identity crisis. So many of us had nowhere we deemed valuable to plug into. It seems like we are living in the age of the zombie apocalypse, where we were once slaves and now we're expected to be robots, except the robots are coming and they're going to do our jobs better than we can. The purpose of culture is to open us to wisdom, and I couldn't find any wisdom in this culture. So you have to change the world before it changes you. And I had to escape. What would it take to change our culture so that it encourages young people to go on the journey to live with heart? To take the time to search within ourselves and find our purpose, to understand ourselves before we make adult investments, before we get married, before we have children, before we perpetuate the same cycles that we've learned and observed, to prepare ourselves before we enter the fray, and to create from there. I think it is a necessity, a systemic necessity. In a world spinning ever faster, how do we remember that life is not a race to accumulate the most toys? Even when everything in our environment is telling us that this is what we are here to do. The kids are taking a very long time to mature, and that's true. And I'm here to tell you that it's a good thing. And if you take one thing from this talk, I hope it's that concept. There's a new phase in human development that people are calling emerging adulthood. It's the time period between adolescence and adulthood, and it's spanning sometimes a decade or longer in youth, contemporary youth. Sometimes I call it the age of freedom, because in this time period we change everything. We change jobs, we change partners, we change locations, we experiment with weird hairdos, and we get a bunch of tattoos, and we contemplate everything and challenge everything we've been told about our identity down to our gender. Nothing in our world is fixed. And it is from this time period where youth culture is spawned. It is a very, very tender phase in human life, where young people have to learn to step into their strength, meet our material needs, or we will perish. We will stay dependent on others forever. It is also the time when we really have the time to contemplate our individual sense of morality and the meaning of our existence. Young people are responsible for some of the most glorious revolutions in history. We have been the force to emancipate minority populations. It is this time period known as emerging adulthood where we get to look out at the social contract we've inherited and scream, "What about me?" It is the time when we have the energy to be part of the resistance. And yet during this time period, the majority of emerging adults experience severe anxiety, highly documented rates of depression. Suicidal ideation occurs in its highest frequency in your 20s. We are desperately searching to find order and a sense of efficacy within this chaos. We are yearning for something transcendent. It is my belief that young people are taking more and more time to adapt into our structures because we want to live our own self-determined values. We see that the goal is to have a symbolic experience, to come full circle. We experiment to test what our needs are and discover our preferences because more of us believe that navigating through this world can be a creative, intuitive process. But there is nowhere else to go. There's no escape. This is our world. So is this time period different? Is the world getting meaner? Is it more impossible for the common person to have a middle-class life? Is technology the main difference that makes the millennials different than our predecessors? So many elders, when I complain about the horrors of the world and the human rights violations, sing it's the same old song. Except, is there a larger crisis looming? Is there a slow and insidious cry for our systems to adapt? Millennials are the largest generation in history. We are the most well-educated as far as the number of us who have gone to college. We are the most diverse. We will eventually make up 40% of the voting population. President Obama, the Barack baby, said, "We are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it." The truth is that extractive capitalism is waging blitzkrieg warfare on our natural resources. Corporatism is homogenizing our populations like an invasive species to the point where it seems nothing small and original can survive. if the largest and most diverse, the smartest, civically minded generation in history can't overcome all this, who can? So we went around the country in a 1978 RV with the words, "Be you, be sure," on them. It was this inspirational message of self-esteem and resolve that we scrawled on stickers and t-shirts. We spray painted "Be you, be sure" on the sidewalks across the country. Figure out who you are and then do what you are designed to do. The mobile home broke down over 30 times. It caught on fire in Camarillo, California, and is now sitting in a garbage dump, which everyone warned us about, but we didn't listen. And it was a really scary thing to do, and it was brave. And in the eternal internal war between faith and doubt, there were so many moments when it seemed that faith was the losing army. We were not sure at all, but we were driven by potential, purpose, peace, possibility, and the overwhelming desire above all else to heal. So we need to change the entire way that we view the human experience, away from an endless, linear act of conquering others and nature with a beginning and an end into a regenerative, cyclical, interdependent synthesis. The goal for young people is to grow up and not lose our essence. The goal for young people is to become women and men as our place in the sweep of history begins and ends. So what does it take to grow up? This was the hard part. Getting back from the road trip was the hard part. To grow, you must learn to release your own views, your beliefs, your interpretations over and over again. You must learn to stay confident within a giant open question. You must find your humility. You must cultivate discipline, or your dream will die. It will never manifest. You must find a way to productively interpret obstacles, loss, misfortune, so you can learn what it means to really move forward, to recreate yourself, to love over and over again. This is the time period when you figure out how to live with others. It is the time when you go to the ends of the earth to find your affinity group, your kindred. This is the time period when you break away from the will of your parents to become your own person. It is the time when you realize it is your role alone to protect yourself from the dangers of this world. And it is the time when you must own the damage you unconsciously inflict onto yourself and others. To be a well-functioning adult is to learn to shift your ways as you witness the unintended consequences of your actions. And you must believe you are good throughout this process. How we treat the people around us. To become women and men happens by striving for non-violence with our every footstep. To have a healthy society, and we are all co-creating this reality, more people than ever recognize that, and I think that's where our greatest hope lives, is that we have to learn to shift our structures and our policies in a similar fashion. At the end of emerging adulthood is integration. And it is for this reason why I believe becoming an adult and transforming our world are identical processes. Thank you.